Get this kid out of my courtroom. Now. Judge Walker's gavel cracked like a gunshot, the sound ricocheting off wood and marble. He pointed it at the smallest figure in Riverside County's packed courtroom, a 9-year-old in an oversized thrift store suit, like it was a weapon. The gallery snickered, then laughed, then openly jeered. "Look at this little boy playing lawyer," someone sneered. "Pathetic," another voice chimed in. The bailiff's boots hammered closer. "Move it, kid. You're embarrassing yourself." Beside the boy, a woman gripped a worn purse with both trembling hands. "Please," Emma Johnson said, voice cracking. "He's just trying to help." "Silence," Walker barked. "I will not permit a circus in my court. Remove this child before I cite you both for contempt." Phone cameras lifted. A slow clap started. The boy didn't flinch. He stood tall, chin lifted, eyes steady. He drew a breath that sounded far too calm for a 9-year-old. "Your Honor," he said, clear and measured, "I appear as next friend under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 17. Laughter died, like a candle pinched between fingers. The judge's face went rigid. Lawyers froze mid-smirk. Even the bailiff paused, boot hanging in the air. Something had just shifted, something no one in this room had expected. To understand how a child could hold a courtroom in his small hands, we rewind 3 weeks to a building that coughed out cold air and kept its secrets. Maple Heights apartments looked tired of standing. Paint curled from the walls like old scabs. Black mold crept up corners and bloomed behind cribs. The heater had given up before winter arrived, and brown water coughed from pipes that rattled like bones. Here, Liam Johnson sat cross-legged on a thin rug, mountains of cast-off law books towering around him like a fortress. He traced paragraphs by lamplight, lips moving as he memorized case law with a hunger other kids saved for cartoons. At 9, Liam had devoured more legal text than most first years. He didn't find the books, he rescued them. 3 years before, the county law library had tossed outdated volumes in a dumpster, and Liam had dragged them home with the solemnity of a firefighter carrying a child from smoke. While others traded game cards, he traded hours of sleep for federal statutes. While other kids collected heroes, he collected precedents. "Liam, baby, come eat," Emma called from the tiny kitchen, where a single burner worked when it felt generous. She worked 3 jobs, pre-dawn cleaning, midday stocking, late-night delivery. Life carving years into the soft places around her eyes. She never said, "I'm tired." She only said, "We'll be okay." Because that's what mothers say when a system tries to grind them down. Liam set a bishop on a chessboard and played both sides. When he needed to think, he made the board a battlefield and moved in silence. The walls wore his handwriting. Arrows, boxes, terms of art. Implied warranty of habitability. Constructive eviction. Burden of proof. A child's letters. An adult's intent. Their landlord, Mr. Harris, owned over 200 units through Harris Realty Group. He drove a different luxury car each day, like morning outfits. His business model was simple. Buy cheap, ignore maintenance, let structures rot, then sue families for the damage time and neglect had already done. The lawsuits demanded sums no cashier or cleaner could pay. Then the system did the rest. Tenants fled, credit died, and the machine rolled on. Overseeing Riverside County Housing Court for decades, Judge Walker had never met a landlord he couldn't bless. Lawyers whispered about Walker specials, cases where the outcome arrived before the arguments did. They joked. Families bled. The notice came at 6 a.m., the knock too hard for dawn. Emma signed papers with shaking hands. $50,000, the suit claimed. Water damage, structural cracks, spreading mold. It made their apartment look like a disaster zone, which, to be fair, it was. It had been. "They're saying we destroyed the place," she whispered. Liam's eyes sharpened. "Do we still have your move-in photos?" Emma blinked. "Yes, but, Liam, we can't afford a lawyer." "We won't hire one," he said softly. "We'll become one." While the city slept, Liam combed statutes and ghosts. He learned the spine of property law, the heartbeat of civil procedure, the veins of federal regulations. He found next friend in Rule 17. He read cases where courts deputized ordinary people to act when loved ones couldn't. He learned the rules so well he could see where others hid behind them. The week ground Emma down. Legal aid couldn't help for months. The free clinic was closed to budget cuts. Mr. Harris started showing up at her jobs, talking to managers in soft tones and sharp smiles. One position vanished under insurance concerns. Emma stopped eating right so her son could. Her hands shook at night when she thought he wasn't watching. "Maybe we should take the deal," she said one evening, letter trembling in her fingers. "Move out now, and they won't chase the 50,000. If you sign, you admit guilt," Liam said. "Your credit dies forever. Then how do we rent again? How do you get a car? A bank account? If we fight and lose, they'll garnish my wages for years." That night, Emma collapsed in a janitor's closet, found by a manager who didn't know what to do with a woman asleep beside bleach. The doctor called it dehydration and exhaustion. Liam watched through glass as machines blinked around the woman who worked like 3 people just to be one mother. "She needs rest. Less stress," the doctor said. "She'll get it when this ends," Liam answered, and meant when we win. The next morning, Liam walked into the clerk's office wearing a jacket whose sleeves swallowed his wrists. He carried a scuffed briefcase like a knight carries a shield. The room hummed with fluorescence and typing. Behind the counter sat Mrs. Brown, 20-plus years of every filing imaginable, none like this. "Can I help you, honey? Are you lost?" "No, ma'am. I'm filing a pro-SE motion for next friend representation in Johnson versus Harris Realty Group." He set down papers thick with care. "Under Federal Rule 17. Emergency affidavit attached." Mrs. Brown stared. "I don't think children can." "With respect," Liam said gently. "Could you show me the rule that sets an age requirement for next friend in emergency proceedings?" Her mouth opened, closed. He went on. "Rule 17C allows a person who lacks capacity to sue by a next friend. My mother is temporarily incapacitated by stress-related illness caused by this litigation. As the person most affected by the outcome, I qualify. Refusing to accept a proper filing based solely on my age, without a legal basis, risks an equal protection issue under the 14th Amendment." 20 minutes of whispers and phone calls later, Mrs. Brown returned with the stamp that makes paper loud. "Your motion is accepted. Hearing is set for next Friday at 9. Judge Walker's courtroom." "Thank you for your professionalism," Liam said, and meant it. News travels fast in buildings with marble floors. Tenants whispered about the kid with the briefcase. Mrs. Davis brought photos of broken stairs. Mr. Lewis arrived with months of unanswered heating complaints. Liam made copies, sorted, labeled, mapped. He didn't sleep much. He learned the smell of dust in the law library at 2 a.m. There, one night, he found thunder. An inspection report, 3 months before move-in, detailed the same water damage and mold that Harris Realty Group now blamed on Emma. He traced dates, cross-referenced property insurance claims, matched them to lawsuits. A pattern emerged: buy rot, document it, hide it, rent it, blame the next family, file the claim, profit, repeat. He also uncovered something colder: Judge Walker's membership at Maplewood Country Club, dues paid by a landlord association chaired by Mr. Harris. And the judge's retirement account? It held shares in Harris's company. Bias wasn't a rumor. It had a routing number. The morning of court arrived wrapped in camera cables. News vans lined the curb. Inside, Courtroom 3B pulsed with spectators who smelled history. On one side, Mr. Harris and 5 attorneys from a white shoe firm. At their center, Mr. Taylor, a man famous for never losing and for enjoying it. On the other, a boy in a jacket 2 sizes too big and a mother squeezing his fingers until her knuckles whitened. Judge Walker swept in, black robe billowing like storm cloth. "This is highly irregular," he announced. "Children do not practice law in my courtroom. This circus ends now." Mr. Taylor rose, voice smooth as oiled wood. "Your Honor, we move to dismiss. Allowing a child to play lawyer makes a mockery of the system." Laughter rippled. Someone muttered, "Send him home to his toys." Liam stood. "Your Honor, Rule 17C permits next friend representation. My standing has been established and accepted. Additionally, I move that all evidence today be entered under oath with perjury penalties applying to every statement and document. A small motion. A big trap. Mr. Taylor's jaw flexed. Proceed, Walker said warily. But I warn you, no grandstanding. Truth doesn't need it, Liam replied. Mr. Taylor painted Emma as a wrecking ball. He paraded photos of cracked walls and stained ceilings, his voice rising into practiced outrage. $50,000 in damage. Gross negligence. Willful destruction. When he finished, Liam approached with calm he borrowed from somewhere deep. Your Honor, counsel's argument fails on causation and timeline. He lifted a stack of photos. These were taken the day we moved in. 2 years ago. You'll see the same cracks, the same stains, the same mold. We reported them to city agencies within a week. Repairs were never made. Objection. Mr. Taylor snapped. This child is being coached. Overruled, Walker said too quickly. The evidence is documented. Whispers. Shifting chairs. Mr. Harris's composure slipped. Liam felt it. The room moving, the tide turning by inches. Even if some problems pre-existed, Taylor pushed, the extent of damage was clearly worsened by tenant negligence. That's a fair question, Liam said, nodding. Which is why I have additional evidence that clarifies the true timeline. He let silence gather, then turned to the bench. However, before I present it, I have serious concerns about conflicts of interest that may affect these proceedings. I respectfully request a brief recess to gather documentation related to judicial ethics and financial disclosures. The gallery inhaled at once. Lawyers shot each other looks. Judge Walker blanched. Mr. Harris forgot not to look afraid. Recess granted, Walker said, voice thin. 30 minutes. Cameras swiveled. Reporters sprinted. In the hallway, Mr. Harris strode up, the quiet thread of power tightening his smile. Listen, kid, you're playing with forces you don't understand. Are you attempting to intimidate a witness? Liam asked, loud enough for microphones. Because that's obstruction. Security drifted closer. Emma stepped between them, a shield made of love and nerve. Around them, tenants gathered, Mrs. Davis clutching her photos, Mr. Lewis with his stack of ignored requests. The story had outgrown a single apartment. In the restroom's hush, Emma squeezed water from a paper towel and pressed it to her neck. Baby, I'm scared. These people have everything to lose. I know, Liam said. That's why they can't be allowed to keep it. He straightened the jacket. In his briefcase lay the paper, thunder he planned to roll across the bench. When the recess ended, the room would meet a different storm. As spectators filed back to their seats and the cameras red-eyed their lenses, Liam returned to the defense table. He looked small again until he looked up. Your Honor, he said, voice steady as a laid-out blueprint. Before any further argument on property damage, I formally request your recusal due to undisclosed financial conflicts. The room went weightless, as if the building itself held its breath. Judge Walker's knuckles whitened on the bench. Mr. Harris stared at the boy like he'd finally seen the shape of his own shadow. And then Liam opened his briefcase. Every camera light in Riverside County Courthouse seemed to burn brighter as 9-year-old Liam Johnson pulled a thick folder from his briefcase. He handled it carefully, almost reverently, as if it contained not paper, but truth itself. Your Honor, he said, public records confirm you own 500 shares of Harris Realty Group, purchased through your retirement fund. You also hold membership at Maplewood Country Club, with annual dues of $12,000 paid by the Riverside Landlords Association, chaired by the plaintiff, Mr. Harris. The silence that followed was so sharp it could have cut glass. The gallery stirred, soft gasps, then murmurs, then a sudden thunder of whispers. Reporters leaned forward like hunters smelling blood. Judge Walker's face drained of color. Young man, those are serious allegations. They're not allegations, Liam replied. They're documented facts. I've attached the payment receipts and financial disclosure forms to the record. You've ruled on over 800 housing cases in 5 years, with 98% favoring landlords. Statistically impossible without bias. Every word hit like a hammer. Mr. Taylor, the high-priced attorney, half rose in protest, but the moment had already shifted. The boy's voice, calm but certain, carried the kind of power no courtroom title could command. "I respectfully request your immediate recusal," Liam said, "on grounds of undisclosed financial conflict and violation of judicial ethics Canon 3. For a long, trembling moment, Judge Walker didn't move. Then, quietly, he said, "This court is in recess." When the gavel fell, pandemonium erupted. News crews surged toward the door. Tweets, clips, and live broadcasts flooded every feed. Hashtag the kid lawyer, hashtag justice in Riverside, hashtag courtroom revolution. In the hallway, Mr. Harris cornered Mr. Taylor, face red and jaw tight. "Fix this," he hissed. "I don't care what it takes." "You don't understand," Taylor muttered, eyes darting to the cameras. The boy didn't just accuse the judge. He's provided proof. Inside a nearby restroom, Emma Johnson held her son's shoulders, hands trembling. "Liam, what happens now?" He met her eyes with quiet conviction. "They'll replace him. They have to. And when they do, we'll show them everything." 2 hours later, the courtroom reopened under new leadership. The bailiff's voice echoed, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Anderson." The woman who entered wasn't like the others. Judge Anderson had a reputation for incorruptibility and a stare that could melt arrogance. She glanced at the cameras, then at Liam. Her tone was brisk but kind. "This court recognizes the motion for judicial recusal as valid. Proceedings will continue under my oversight." Then, turning to the crowd, "Let the record show that transparency is not optional in this court." The gallery broke into spontaneous applause before the gavel restored silence. Mr. Taylor began again, but the rhythm was gone from his voice. "Your Honor, with all due respect, the defendant's child has no formal training." "Mr. Taylor," Judge Anderson interrupted, "the child has cited correct procedure, produced valid evidence, and uncovered judicial misconduct. I suggest you proceed carefully." Liam's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile. Mr. Harris took the stand. His once immaculate composure had cracked. Sweat shone at his temple as Taylor asked the routine questions, trying to rebuild control. But when Liam rose for cross-examination, the boy's calm returned, deliberate and devastating. "Mr. Harris," he began, "you claim my mother caused $50,000 in damage. Is that your sworn testimony?" "Yes," Harris said quickly. "Absolutely." "Then could you explain," Liam said, holding up a document, "why your own inspection report dated 3 months before we moved and lists the exact same damage?" He placed the photos side by side. Water stains, cracked walls, black mold. "Identical." The courtroom gasped. Harris's mouth opened, but no sound came. "These are your records, aren't they?" Liam pressed. "Yes, but..." "So you knowingly rented an unsafe unit and then sued us for pre-existing damage?" "Objection," Taylor barked. "Speculative." "Overruled," Judge Anderson said. "Answer the question." I didn't know those reports were still active." "You signed them," Liam said softly. Every flashbulb captured the moment the millionaire blinked under a child's calm stare. Liam wasn't finished. He unfolded chart after chart. Insurance filings, eviction statistics, copies of identical lawsuits across Harris Realty Group's entire portfolio. "This isn't one mistake," he said. "It's a pattern. You've been suing families for damages that existed before they moved in. Hundreds of them." The room exploded in murmurs. A few in the gallery started to cry. "Your Honor," Liam continued, "I move that this court recognize this as evidence of systematic fraud." Judge Anderson leaned forward, eyes narrowing at Harris. "Do you deny these records?" "I invoke the Fifth Amendment," Harris muttered. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Taylor froze, staring at his client in disbelief. "The Fifth Amendment," Judge Anderson repeated, "in a civil housing case?" Harris's silence was the only answer. Liam turned to face the families in the gallery, faces lined with exhaustion, hope, disbelief. "This isn't just about us," he said quietly. "It's about every tenant who was told they were powerless." Outside, reporters mobbed the steps, their questions colliding into a frenzy. "How did you find the documents? Who helped you prepare the filings? Liam, do you plan to become a lawyer?" He stopped on the courthouse stairs, the winter wind whipping at his sleeves. "My mom taught me that right is right," he said simply, so I just looked for the law that agreed with her. The clip would travel the world before nightfall. Back inside, Judge Anderson reviewed the pile of evidence that now covered her bench. "This court," she said at last, "finds clear indicators of criminal conduct. Proceedings will be referred to the district attorney for immediate investigation." A stunned hush, then a cheer so loud it shook the hallways. Reporters raced for the doors. Liam sat very still. For the first time in weeks, his mother's hand was steady as it found his. But amid the applause and flashing lights, Liam noticed something. Mr. Harris whispering to Mr. Taylor, then slipping a folded note to a man in a gray suit near the exit. The man's eyes flicked toward Liam, then away. A chill ran down the boy's spine. The battle in court was won. But outside those walls, a darker game had just begun. The applause faded behind them, but the echo of it followed Liam Johnson all the way home. The night air over Riverside County was sharp with rain, and camera flashes still popped from the courthouse steps as he and Emma slipped into the crowd. For the first time, the mother looked lighter, yet the boy's eyes were distant, restless. "Baby," she whispered, clutching his arm, "we did it. We actually did it." "Not yet," Liam said softly. "They'll fight back." She frowned, but he was right. In another corner of the city, Mr. Harris sat in his glass office overlooking the river, staring at a dozen missed calls from shareholders and board members. His empire was shaking. For years, he'd ruled with paperwork and fear. But tonight a child had turned his system into a spectacle. The news headline crawling across the bottom of every TV screen read, "9-year-old exposes massive housing fraud in Riverside County." Mr. Harris's phone buzzed again. It was Mr. Taylor. "This is bad," Taylor said. "The district attorney's already reviewing the filings. If they find criminal intent." "They won't," Harris snapped. "We'll settle, we'll bury it, we'll discredit the kid. Nobody takes a 9-year-old seriously for long." But deep down, he knew that was wishful thinking. The world had already taken notice. At home, Emma tried to feed Liam warm soup, but he barely touched it. He sat at the kitchen table, tracing a map of the city's landlord associations with a pencil. "They'll try to destroy the evidence," he murmured. "We have to get ahead of them." His mother sighed, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Baby, you're just a little boy. You've already done enough." He looked up at her, eyes dark and certain. "Mama, the system doesn't stop when you win one case. It stops when it's afraid to keep cheating." Emma swallowed hard. For a moment, she didn't see her child. She saw a young man made from the ashes of everything she'd endured. The next morning, Harris Realty Group went silent. Their website vanished. Employees deleted social accounts. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots of lawsuits, property violations, and secret club payments flooded social media. Former tenants spoke out. "He ruined us," said one woman through tears. "But that boy, he gave us back hope." Meanwhile, Judge Anderson ordered a full audit of every eviction case Judge Walker had handled in 10 years. What they found was staggering. Fake maintenance receipts, backdated court filings, even secret donations made to judicial campaigns by landlord groups. But as the investigation spread, so did danger. Late one night, Emma woke to soft knocks on the door. No sound from outside, no footsteps, just that knock. Then silence. Her pulse spiked. She went to the peephole. Nothing. She turned and froze. A note had been slid under the door. "Stop now, or lose everything." She grabbed the phone with trembling hands. "Liam, wake up." He read the note quietly, then folded it once. "They're scared," he said. Emma's voice cracked. "They're dangerous." He nodded. But scared people make mistakes. The next day, Riverside County News ran a headline that deepened the storm. Judge Walker under federal investigation. Ties to Harris Realty confirmed. Every station picked it up. Protesters gathered outside Harris Realty Group's offices, holding signs that read "Justice for Tenants" and "Thank you, Liam." What began as one family's survival fight had become a county-wide rebellion. Still, Harris wasn't done. Inside his mansion, he gathered what was left of his legal team. "We counterattack," he growled. If the court of law won't help us, we'll use the court of public opinion. Make the boy look like a pawn, a puppet. His PR team moved fast. Within hours, talk shows buzzed with headlines like, "Is the kid lawyer a hoax?" and "Who's coaching the child genius?" Hashtags flipped. Supporters fought back online, but the smear campaign spread faster than truth. When Emma saw the coverage, her face broke. "They're calling you fake, Liam." He just smiled faintly. "Good. That means they're out of arguments." 2 days later, Judge Anderson reconvened court for follow-up hearings. The room was even more crowded this time. Every major news outlet had a camera pointed at the bench. But when she entered, the air went still. "This court," she said, "has received overwhelming evidence of fraud within Harris Realty Group and corruption within this judicial district. Mr. Harris, you are ordered to testify." Harris rose slowly, his suit immaculate, his smile practiced. "Your Honor, this is unnecessary." "Sit," she said. Liam rose too, a single folder in hand. "Your Honor, may I submit Exhibit 27, insurance claim records filed by Harris Realty Group, listing property damage identical to their lawsuits against tenants. The claims were paid by insurers while tenants were sued for the same damages." Judge Anderson scanned the papers, eyes hardening. "Mr. Harris, do you deny this?" He hesitated. The cameras leaned closer. "I don't recall." "Under oath, Mr. Harris," the judge pressed. Silence. Then, "I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Liam turned slowly toward the gallery, toward the rows of families who had once whispered in fear. "Your Honor," he said, voice clear, "I move that these findings be turned over to the federal prosecutor. The pattern proves intent to defraud hundreds of tenants." Judge Anderson nodded. "So ordered." The gavel struck once, loud, final, echoing. That night, the courthouse steps filled again. Reporters surrounded Emma and Liam as they emerged. A woman from a local station held a microphone toward the boy. "Liam, what made you keep going when everyone said you'd lose?" He looked up at the lights, his breath fogging in the cold. "Because losing quietly helps bad people win loudly." The clip went viral within hours. Millions watched. Thousands shared. And the next morning, across Riverside County, tenants began organizing. They called themselves the Johnson Circle, named after the boy who refused to bow. But not everyone celebrated. Deep inside a courthouse office, Judge Walker signed resignation papers with a shaking hand. The system he had built to protect the powerful had collapsed under the weight of a child's courage. As he stared at the document, one thought gnawed at him. If one boy could expose all this, how many others would follow? Meanwhile, federal agents raided Harris Realty Group's headquarters. Files were seized, assets frozen. The empire built on intimidation was crumbling brick by brick. But as they led Mr. Harris away in handcuffs, his eyes locked on Liam's image on a nearby television. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Back home." Emma held her son close. "Baby, I think it is." But Liam's expression said otherwise. "Mama," he whispered, "this isn't the end. It's the beginning. Now, the real work starts." He turned to the window, where protest lights flickered against the night sky. Proof that truth, once spoken, could burn bright enough to change everything. 3 months later, Riverside County Courthouse stood surrounded by news vans again. But this time, no one came to witness corruption. They came to celebrate its end. Inside, a new banner hung on the wall. Public hearing. The People versus Harris Realty Group. The air smelled of change. Stale paper replaced by fresh ink. Fear replaced by courage. On the front row sat Emma Johnson, hands folded in her lap, eyes glistening with quiet pride. Beside her, now 10 years old, Liam Johnson adjusted his tie. He still looked small behind the defense table, but there was something different about him now, calmer, steadier, and somehow older than time. Judge Anderson entered, greeted by applause instead of silence. "This hearing," she began, "marks the conclusion of a case that revealed systematic fraud and exposed a network of judicial corruption spanning decades. We are here today not just to close a file, but to open a new chapter for justice in this county." Her words drew a standing ovation. Cameras clicked. Even the bailiff smiled. Across the aisle, Mr. Harris stood in a gray suit that didn't fit like it used to. His wealth, his company, his reputation, gone. His attorneys had all resigned. His eyes darted to the boy he had once mocked as a kid playing lawyer. He still couldn't believe that child had torn down everything he built. "Mr. Harris," Judge Anderson said, "you've pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud, coercion, and illegal property practices. Before I pass sentence, you will address the court." For a moment, he said nothing. Then, shoulders sagging, he turned to Emma and Liam. "I apologize," he said quietly, voice cracking, "to the Johnson family and to every family I've hurt." The courtroom was so quiet that the hum of the air conditioning sounded like thunder. Even then, Liam didn't smile. He only nodded once, accepting the apology like a man signing the final line of history. Judge Anderson's voice filled the room again. "This court sentences Mr. Harris to 12 years in federal custody and authorizes the redistribution of Harris Realty Group's properties into tenant-owned cooperatives. Justice, it seems, has finally come home." The gavel fell. The sound wasn't loud, but it echoed far. Into apartments once filled with mold and fear. Into hearts that had forgotten what fairness felt like. Into homes where children like Liam could finally dream without leaks in the ceiling. When they stepped outside, the steps were filled with people, hundreds of families who had once lived in silence. They chanted one name: Liam, Liam, Liam. Reporters rushed forward. Microphones surrounded him like flowers around a flame. A journalist asked, "What does justice feel like?" Liam thought for a long moment, then said softly, "It feels like breathing after holding it for too many years." Cameras flashed. The crowd erupted. Emma laughed through her tears. "You did it, baby." "We did it," he corrected, smiling up at her. "You worked for survival. I worked for proof. We both fought for truth." Within weeks, the Johnson family story spread across the nation. Documentaries were made. Law schools added the Johnson versus Harris Realty case to their ethics curriculum. People who had once ignored eviction notices now demanded tenant protections in city councils across the country. But Liam didn't chase fame. He stayed in school. He played chess again. And sometimes, when reporters came asking for interviews, he simply said, "Justice isn't about being seen. It's about making sure others aren't invisible." 5 years later, Harvard Law Library. The youngest student in the school's history ran his finger along the spines of books that once lived in dumpsters. The lamps hummed softly above him. His mother, now director of the Johnson Family Legal Advocacy Center, visited once a month, always bringing the same smile and home-cooked jollof rice in old lunch tins. "Do you ever think about that day in court?" she asked. Liam smiled. "Every time I read a case where someone forgets what justice means." She tilted her head. "And what does it mean to you?" He turned one of his old photos, the one where he stood before Judge Anderson, clutching his briefcase half his size. "It means this," he said quietly, "that the law only matters if it serves people who can't afford it." Meanwhile, across Riverside County, real change bloomed. Mrs. Davis finally moved into a home with proper heating. Mr. Lewis founded a nonprofit that trained low-income tenants to understand their rights. Mrs. White, once facing eviction at 80, celebrated her birthday, surrounded by neighbors who now owned their apartments together. And the building once known as Maple Heights? It was renamed the Johnson Residences, in honor of the boy who made the walls safe again. Years later, a reporter asked Liam during a public lecture, "What do you say to people who feel powerless?" He paused, scanning the crowd of faces, students, parents, workers, dreamers, and smiled. "I'd tell them this," he said. "Power doesn't live in titles or money. It lives in knowledge, in courage, in people who refuse to stay quiet when the world tells them to sit down." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Even a child can shake the walls of a courthouse if the truth is loud enough." The audience erupted in applause that seemed to stretch forever. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more thrilling, cinematic stories just like this one. Now I'll leave you with one question. What injustice in your world deserves a voice like Liam's? Tell us in the comments. because your story might be the next one that changes everything.